Itachi versus Obito is one of the many theoretical fights in the Naruto community, where both sides just write the other side off with questionable reasoning. Those that took Itachi's side often cite that Obito was afraid of Itachi, and this is extremely exaggerated. One point of evidence for this is when Obito says that the leaf is no longer off limits after Itachi died. I don't believe this means he's feared Itachi though. Itachi made a pact with Obito before the Uchiha massacre that he would join the Akatsuki if the leaf would be left alone by them. It's better for Obito just to respect this pact and wait out Itachi's illness so that Itachi wouldn't interfere with his plan. This is more of a sign of respect for Itachi and not Obito being terrified of him. However, there is some more evidence that points to Obito respecting Itachi to an even greater extent than the last point of evidence. After the Amaterasu implanted in Sasuke hit Obito, Obito thinks that to himself that if Itachi had known everything about him, he would certainly be dead. There's no ambiguity here since he thinks this to himself. He doesn't even say this to Sasuke as he probably doesn't want to appear weak to him. He's not lying to anyone here and is simply just being honest with himself in his own head. This instance in itself should show that, at least when it comes to Orange Mask Obito, there's no stomp going on here. Obito himself is admitting that Itachi has the ability to kill him, which contradicts what many people that just write off Itachi think. Another thing I see common for the people that write off Itachi cite Obito's fight with Minato as evidence that Obito stomps Itachi. And to that I ask, what was the conclusion of that fight? Did Obito defeat Minato and therefore he defeats Itachi? No, he didn't defeat Minato, and in fact he lost pretty hard. While he did force Minato to use Flying Raijin level 2, it still was a short fight nonetheless. That fight is a feat for Minato and not as strong as a feat for Obito. He did stand his own against Flying Raijin level 1 for a while, but he didn't make any progress at defeating Minato at any point of that fight. I'm not trying to be harsh with Obito here, I'm just trying to put this fight into perspective. He held his own against Minato for a while, but this is not a point of evidence that just automatically means he can beat Itachi. In fact, I view Itachi and Minato being quite close in power and intelligence. If you want an explanation as to why, you can watch my Ranking the Uchiha no Kage video, Most Intelligent Naruto Characters video, or my Itachi versus Minato video. I'll go ahead and summarize what I thought needed to be said before I actually discuss the fight. Obito doesn't fear, but instead respects Itachi, and even said himself that Itachi has the potential to kill him. Obito lost to Minato, and Minato is relative to Itachi, so using that fight as evidence for Obito's stomping is not accurate in my opinion. With that out of the way, I'll go ahead and talk about the different versions of Obito when it comes to this fight. Jubito is out of Itachi's league, and Obito with the Rinnegan is also too much. When he has control of 6 Jinchuriki, it would be too much for Itachi to deal with, and if Obito uses Planetary Devastation, it would also be problematic. So really that just leaves Orange Mask Obito and the Obito that fought Minato. The Obito that fought Minato had the 9 tails as summon, but I don't view this as an advantage. We saw Sasuke defeat the 8 tails with Amaterasu, and the same thing happens here. Since the 8 tails couldn't dodge it, I'd expect the same for the 9 tails. It also could be possible for Itachi to undo Obito's Genjutsu on Kurama. This means I'm really only going to be talking about Orange Mask Obito in this video. There is no clear increase in power between Orange Mask Obito and the one that fought Minato. All we know is that he grew up, but understanding how much better he got is impossible. So with all that being said, I believe I can finally start talking about the matchup. The first thing that needs to be addressed is how much intel they have on each other. If you want to make it so that neither have intel on each other, I actually think that favors Itachi, but I'll explain that later on. When it comes to Obito, he should actually know about everything about Itachi. This is because when Zetsu watched Itachi's final fight, he knew every single one of Itachi's abilities. After Itachi dies, Obito asks if Zetsu recorded the battle and says that he wants to review it over it later. Zetsu already knew everything about Itachi though, so by extension I would expect for Obito to have the same level of understanding. This is supported by Obito recognizing Amaterasu when it hits him. As for Itachi, he has less intel here. He doesn't know that Obito has Izanagi, but he should know about Kamui. After all, they committed the Uchiha massacre together, and I'm sure Obito had to use Kamui during that night. It's not completely confirmed, and even then I don't think intel on Kamui gives Itachi a big advantage here. This is because I'm certain that Itachi can figure it out during the fight, just like how Minato did. Like I said, I believe these two have similar levels of intelligence on the battlefield, and it took Minato about 2 exchanges to figure out Kamui. Itachi is also the one who said every jutsu has a weakness and his feats prove it. He quickly figured out how to counter Planetary Devastation at Otensei, so I expect for him to at least figure out Kamui as well. However, you may be asking, how does Itachi prevent losing to Kamui long enough in order to figure it out? In a scenario where Itachi does not initially understand Kamui, he has a way to not lose immediately. If Obito grabs him and becomes tangible to suck him in, then Itachi can use his Susanoo ribcage to stop this. Minato had the option to teleport away while Itachi can try to attack him with the Susanoo as a last-ditch effort. I'm also certain that he can activate this in time as well. His full Susanoo manifested faster than lightning to block Kirin, so just a ribcage in hand should appear fast enough to force Obito to become intangible again. After this exchange, Itachi will be able to at least understand that Obito can pass through objects, but must be tangible in order to try to suck him into his eye. This changes how Itachi approaches the fight going forward. He's going to start scheming on how to beat Kamui, and he's going to test his ideas. He may try to see if ninjutsu works by using Amaterasu, but this can be nullified by Kamui. He only has one other viable option, but first I should mention how Obito changes his game plan here. After the first exchange, I don't expect him to change anything. He didn't change anything against Minato, and instead he'll just use Kamui faster. This also is the same during the war arc, and he only makes small adjustments to his opponent's game plan. Approaching the Susanoo ribcage from the front is one option Obito can try. If he slips through the arm attacking him, and slips through the ribcage, then he could become intangible inside of it and try to defeat Itachi. I really don't expect Itachi to let Obito get close though, and instead he'll create space whenever Obito tries something like that. The other thing he could do is disappear and then go for Itachi's blind spot. Minato is able to react to something like this, so I expect the same for Itachi. Itachi would be on his guard by this point anyway, and I think he would survive this at least once. He could create space or attack Obito in a scenario like this. So at this point in the fight, neither party really has an advantage. Obito's one-dimensional strategy is countered by Itachi, but this costs him chakra. Obito would be going for outlasting Itachi at this point of the fight, that is until he pulls out his Totsuka blade. The Totsuka blade is Itachi's only win condition because it becomes intangible itself when it's used to seal someone. Since it's intangible, Obito can't use Kamui just to slip through it, as you must interact with a physical object in order to activate Kamui. I do believe that Obito is fully aware of this, but in a scenario where neither have intel on the other, Obito would be done here. Obito always just resorts to passing through attacks, and he'll do this when he sees the giant sword quickly approaching him. He won't be able to phase through it, and he won't be able to cast any jutsu either. When Nagato was caught under it, he became paralyzed and couldn't even use Almighty Push. Kabuto also lost control of Nagato's mind when this happened as well. This means that Obito can't just use Kamui or Izanagi if the Totsuka blade touches him. So in a scenario where Obito has no intel, Itachi would win with his Totsuka blade. However, if this fight were to have happened in the series, Obito would have been familiar with the Totsuka blade. So how does he deal with it? Once Itachi begins to manifest his full Susanoo, Obito will certainly disappear, so he doesn't risk being sealed. From there, Obito's best bet is slipping through the ground under the Susanoo and trying to grab Itachi like that. Like I said earlier, Itachi will be on his guard and can react like Minato by counterattacking or creating space. Obito will just vanish again, but he is at a disadvantage here. If the fight continues like this, Itachi may be able to catch Obito eventually, but Obito has one other completely broken jutsu. Izanagi is Obito's win condition in this fight. With it active before the Totsuka blade seals him, he can trick Itachi into letting his guard down. The way that Izanagi works is that you can activate it, and then you have 60 seconds to erase your death before your eyes close. If you don't erase anything, then your eye closes anyway. So at a certain point in the fight, Obito will realize that he needs to use Izanagi to win. He'll let himself get sealed with Izanagi active, so that Itachi will let his guard down. Reappearing after using Izanagi can be delayed infinitely, I believe. Obito might have delayed it for several minutes when he fought Konan, and Madara delayed it for at least several days after Hashirama killed him. Either way, Obito can hide like he did after he used it against Konan. Once Itachi lets his guard down, Obito can backstab him in order to win. Itachi won't know about Izanagi, considering his plan for killing Obito is one Amaterasu, which can be negated with Izanagi. So even if Itachi can counter Obito's Kamui, Izanagi is not something that can be countered here due to its element of surprise. It's just like Obito said in the end, if Itachi knew everything about him, he'd surely be dead. This does mean though that the Obito that fought Minato can't beat Itachi though. Amaterasu kills Kurama, and this Obito can't use Izanagi since he hadn't collected Sharingans after the Uchiha massacre yet. The Totsuka blade was fast enough that it sealed Nagato before he could even realize what had happened. It was also fast enough to cut off his arm before he could react, in another instance too. In my opinion, I think Itachi could eventually seal and defeat the Obito that fought Minato, but Orange Mask Obito would use Izanagi to win. So that also means that War Arc Obito and Jubito wins as well. In conclusion, this is a very straightforward but close fight. This is not a stomp either way. Like I said earlier, Obito isn't afraid of Itachi, and on the other hand, Obito doesn't just stomp Itachi. He even says to himself that if Itachi knew everything about him, he'd be dead. That's why Itachi can beat the Obito that fought Minato, since Izanagi's element of surprise isn't present for that fight. However, any version of Obito after that wins thanks to Izanagi. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Comment something if you have something to say. And thank y'all for watching, and I guess I'll see y'all next time.